Yo, what is going on, guys? TymeStopper here, coming back at you, another Raid Shadow Legends video. Guys, in this video, we're talking about fusions. That's right, the brand new fusion information has just dropped from Plarium, and it's a little bit interesting. Should you go for it? Should you care? I'm not sure, but let's talk about it. So let's jump into the video. Okay, guys, so we just got the news from Plarium about what is going to be the next fusion. Now, everybody thought that the next fusion was going to be Ultimate Death Knight because they had been talking about it and it seemed like it might be, but it looks like that's not going to be the case for this one. Maybe Ultimate Death Knight will actually be a daily login champion. How cool would that be? Kind of like the Deliana or whatever style ones where you log in for 7 days and get them for free. That would be super cool. Hopefully they do something like that because they did say that we were getting information in August on him. So, I mean, if we already have a fusion coming out, that's really basically the only other way they could really do one. But let's stop belaboring the point. Let's hop in here. We have our brand new fusion. Now, before we go over what I think about him and whether or not I think you should get him, couple things to note. We do know that he is going to be dropping on Thursday, August 4th, so right after CVC is over. So perfect timing. It doesn't interfere with CVC. They don't have to try to do any kind of updates and mess things up, which is always good, of course. And we do know that it is going to be a hybrid style fusion. Now, I'll talk a little bit more about what a hybrid style fusion is right after we talk about his skill kit and things like that. So stay tuned for that. So first off, we have a HP legendary Force Affinity Champion from the High Elves faction. His name is Lonatharil. I have no idea. I can't pronounce this stuff, you know, and I even tried to ask Siri and she didn't even know how to pronounce it. So who knows what the heck they're talking about. But let's go over this guy's skill kit and talk about where I think he might be useful. So, of course, on his A1, we've got attacks one enemy, decreases the target's max HP by 30% of the damage inflicted, places a shield buff equal to 10% of this champion's max HP for 2 turns on the ally with the lowest HP. So, sounds kind of like a destroy set almost built into his A1 there. Now, on his A2, we've got Flickering Barrier. Attacks all enemies, places a shield buff on all allies for 3 turns equal to 20% of this champion's max HP. So, that's good because it's based on his HP. So, that's something that we can control. And because he's an HP-based champion, we can stack as much HP as we want to make sure that we get that big shield. Now, if there are any dead allies, places a shield buff on all allies for 3 turns equal to 30% of this champion's max HP instead. So, if there's any dead allies, a little bit bigger shield. This buff cannot be removed, stolen, transferred, spread, or have its duration increased or decreased by enemies or allies. Now, when I first read this, the first thought that came to mind was, that sounds like they're worried about us breaking the game like we did with Brogni by increasing the shield and things like that, right? But this is actually pretty cool. If I'm being honest, between his A1 and his A2 right now, what I'm hearing is this guy is supposed to be designed for like a mid-game type player to be able to beat Scarab Boss. Because if you think about it, his A1 has the decreased max HP, so he's knocking down the Scarab King's extra shield or what have you. Even if you decide to just lock it out and make sure that he only does his A1 when he gets to the boss, then you know that he always has a shield up, so he's always protected. With this A2, this says that it's on a 5-turn cooldown. We don't know how many books it is, but if it books twice to a 3-turn cooldown, obviously that's even better because then you would have a shield up basically continuously. So if you wanted to take an entire team in there to kind of speed things up, obviously you could do that. If you can't increase like the duration of it and it ends up being on a 4-turn cooldown, then that won't be nearly as good. You'll have to either increase your speed to kind of go at a faster clip against him or just end up locking him into the A1, which obviously wouldn't be ideal because then you're taking extra time to basically beat the Scarab Boss. But if we can use his A2 and keep our entire team up the whole time, that's a win because then we can greatly reduce the amount of time it takes to beat the Scarab Boss. Because yes, there is the Euros that you can get from the Doom Tower fragments, but even he takes a little bit of time. So if we can do this quicker with like a full team, that would be awesome. Now, quickly onto his A3. On a 6-turn cooldown, maybe books to a 4-turn cooldown, hard to tell. Places a 30% increased crit damage buff on all allies for 2 turns, then teams up with all allies to attack a single enemy. So you can get an ally attack in there. Obviously, there's much better ally attack champions in the game. Cardiel comes to mind. Even Longbeard. I just feel like there's better ally attack champions. But again, if we're thinking like this guy's for Scarab or what have you, then obviously you can go in there, you can do that ally attack. Like let's say you bring a shield in there already, like a champion that's in a shield. You go in there, you ally attack right away. You still have your shield up. Then this guy gets to do his A2. Now we have our continuous shield up, so we don't have to worry about that. So maybe pretty decent. Obviously a crit damage buff isn't quite as good as a crit rate buff where you could build your champions to lower crit rate. But it's also safer because generally for most champions, you don't want to build them to only 70% crit rate unless you're using them in just one team and you know you're always bringing like an increased crit rate buff. This is basically just providing some extra damage to everybody that's in the party. He does look like he has a passive here as well, inflicts 20% more damage against targets under shield buffs. The other thing with his A2, now that I'm thinking about it, is it says that the shield can't be removed, which is also good against Scarab because, you know, Scarab tries to strip your buffs or what have you. So the Scarab won't be able to strip that shield buff, and it'll make sure that you always have those buffs on if nothing else. So that's probably good as well. And then he has the aura, increases ally HP in Doom Tower battles by 35%. That's a pretty big amount of HP. So obviously if you're already stacking HP on this guy and you bring him in as your lead with that aura 35% extra, I mean, you could get a pretty big shield out of this. I'm thinking you could probably go in there with some weaker champions like some Cold Hearts and things like that, and even on the hardest Scarab King bosses beat him. Now, I know I've talked a lot about Scarab Boss and things like that with this guy. Is there anywhere else that I see this guy being useful? Well, obviously having big shields, he's going to be able to help you through Doom Tower waves and things like that. Is he going to be able to help you in Arena? I mean, I don't see him being a huge help in Arena just because of the way his skill set is set up. They are all attacks, right? So he has an attack on all 3 skills. He is HP based, so what we've seen in the past is champions that are HP based don't do a ton of damage, which again, there's much better HP style nukers out there if that's what you're looking for Arena. So I don't know that he'd be super useful there. As for Hydra, the A1 really doesn't do much for Hydra at all. The A2, I mean, not being able to do anything against your shield, I guess that's pretty useful. The ally attack could be useful as well. So, you know, maybe some use in Hydra for sure if you need someone to protect. But, you know, on the higher levels of Hydra, you're so limited in all the different buffs and debuffs that you need to bring. It's kind of hard to get them all in there that I don't know if I can justify bringing someone in just for a shield. It's not like he cleanses. It's not like he's healing. Yes, he has an ally attack, but it's probably going to be on a 4-turn cooldown would be my guess after books. So I just don't know that I would use him anywhere in Hydra personally. As for like dungeons and things like that, sure. I mean, again, the shield is certainly going to help there. Beyond that, I don't see his A1 really helping you in there because you don't really need to worry about decreasing the enemy max HP most of the time when it comes to things like the dungeon waves and things like that. And then obviously campaign, I mean, there's really no reason you'd ever build this guy for campaign. So all in all, not a bad champion. Personally, I think he's probably designed to help with Scarab Boss, just reading over his kit. I could be wrong. If I am, or if you find another way that you think that he'd be better used, let me know in the comment section down below. I'd like to hear what you guys think. Now, as for would I go for him, personally, my take has always been identical on every single fusion. If you can go for him, you 100% should. There are so many legendary champions in this game. The odds of you getting a legendary champion that is specific on a pool are very, very low unless you're just an absolute kraken who is pulling shards every single weekend, every single event. You may not get another shot at getting this guy. So certainly I would go for him. Now, as for going for him, I mentioned earlier that this guy is going to be a hybrid fusion. Now, we have only seen 2 hybrid fusions so far in all of Raid. And if you guys go over to my Fusion calendar, which I'll leave a link to in the video description down below, you guys can access this at any time. This has all the past fusions since I started playing, which is kind of the beginning of 2021. You can just click the links and it'll take you right to them. But there's only 2 hybrid style fusions that we have done. One was an absolute nightmare of an event. The other one wasn't so bad. So the first one that was an absolute nightmare was the Brogni fusion, of course, which I never want to do one of those again. So that was this one here. Either way, it's going to be this style of fusion, meaning that you are going to have 4 epics. They will most likely be brand new epics. You have to build those epics from fragments that you get from the events. So like in this case, we had to do artifact enhancement from the 13th to the 16th. We got 15 Fenshi fragments. So you had to add up to 100 Fenshi fragments. Once you did, you could fuse Fenshi, right? And then you had to fuse the 4 epics into the legendary. This style of fusion is infinitely harder because if you miss fragments, it's very, very difficult to finish the fusion. Most fusions, you can kind of skip things here or there, make up for it. On these style, you can't. Now, don't freak out. Brogni was the first hybrid style fusion we did, but the last one we did wasn't that bad. That was Sigmund the High Shield, if you guys remember. So with Sigmund, it was a little bit easier in the fact that, not that you could get more stuff, but that the point totals were a little more forgiving. So you can always see here on the right-hand side of an event how many points you needed to get those. So for example, in this Summon Rush, you got 25 Thylesia fragments, 25 Demytha fragments. It took you 1,400 points to get to the Thylesia and 3,000 to get to the Demytha, versus the Brogni, which was much, much higher. So if they go with point totals that are a little more like this with the Sigmund the High Shield, it won't be as bad, but the rules still apply. Missing an event makes it infinitely harder to come up with a way to get enough fragments, because with events, you don't get extra fragments. Now, you can get some extra fragments if you place first or second in tournaments usually, but to make up for them makes it very difficult. But the hybrid style fusions are certainly less forgiving than the traditional fusions or even the just regular fragment summons or whatever you want to call them. But either way, make sure that you start thinking about it right now. Obviously, this weekend we have a crazy summons event going on, so they're trying to get you to drop all your shards and everything like that in anticipation. We have the Heroes Path, which I'll be putting out a video a little bit later on the Heroes Path that they came out with this time. So if you burn through a lot of your energy or you burn through all your shards, you may not have enough resources to try to get this guy done next week. So might not be ideal, especially if you want to get this guy. Again, should you go for him? I think if you have the resources, if you have the wherewithal, if you have the ability, 100% get him. Will he be a game changer for an endgame player? Absolutely not. No way. Is he going to be great for a beginner player? Yes. Will he be great for a mid-game player? 100%. If you're struggling on Scarab Boss, this guy is your answer, 100%. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Is this something that you're going to go for, or are you going to skip it? That's about all I have for today, guys. I do want to thank you guys so much for watching to the end. Of course, if you did like the video, be sure to leave a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. It certainly does mean the world to me. It helps the channel out tremendously. Even if you have nothing to say in the comments down below, leave an emoji, leave a smiley face. It'll help me out. But guys, I do want to thank you guys so much for watching. And of course, as always, until next time, be good.